So, hey, gentlemen, happy 18th anniversary. Do you know what's the 18th anniversary of today?
No.
As we record this on Tuesday? Well, it's the week, actually, not the day. But it's the 18th anniversary of More Cowbell.
Is it really? 18 years.
That's a lot of cowbell.
Yes. And
18 years.
18
If you told me it was 8 years, I would have thought, boy, that doesn't seem right. Can't be that long.
18.
And I celebrated by, actually, I celebrate this anniversary probably quarterly. Because I just think it's one of the classic sketches of Saturday Night Live history. And if you haven't seen it yet, just go to YouTube and type in More Cowbell. You also, if you haven't seen it yet, you might ask if you're still running a pulse. Because it's been hard to avoid.
It's awful good.
You know, Christopher Walken, this is totally not apropos of anything really, but every few summers my wife and I watch all the Bond movies in order just because we really love James Bond. And A View to a Kill is probably our least favorite, and in no small part because Christopher Walken was just wasted as the villain. They didn't give him any awesome Chris Walken things to do. And how do you take such a weird, interesting actor like that and waste him as a bland bad guy?
I thought you meant he was inebriated. You said he was wasted as a villain. I thought, well, couldn't they put him in rehab and then,
Incredible. Wow.
Just, what are you going to do?
I got a fever.
I got a fever. The only
Anyway.
prescription is more cowbell.
We now invite you to offer up your bad Christopher Walken impressions as well. You can post it at our MeWe Right Angle group on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you wish, wherever finer Walken impressions are sold. Hey, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle and Steve Green, and we are having our little backstage meeting that we do weekly to plan this week's episodes of Right Angle, which are brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com, as is this episode, and visible only by those who are members thereunto. And this week, I actually... Is that a preposition?
Sounded where it worked for me.
So
I
this
got
week,
lost around the middle of that sentence and I never got out.
You're not alone, brother. This week, I have the privilege of hosting 2 episodes, one of which it will be the members-only episode, and the other will be just distributed willy-nilly, as they say, to the hoi polloi. And I've got 2 episodes. I do not know which one. Oh, hang on a second. I got an idea too that's not an episode, but I think you need to hear this as well. So Michelle Obama, as those who have been watching the new show Bill Whittle Now know, First Lady Michelle Obama is part of this. Started a nonprofit, and they started having a series of rallies this week. Her nonprofit is called When We All Vote. So here's Bill. You got to watch the interview with Bill to see this. But anyway, here's a quote from Michelle Obama's rally in Las Vegas. And follow this carefully. Quote, "We get the leaders we vote for. We get the policies we vote for. And when we don't vote, that's when we wind up with the government of, by, and for other people." The nonprofit, again, is called When We All Vote. And the concern is that we are going to get a government that is of, by, and for other people.
So
Isn't that what the nonprofits are to fight, though?
Everybody should vote except for the wrong people.
Exactly. And this is a nonprofit, so she's not allowed, you can't risk your nonprofit 501c3 status.
Can't say any names.
Yeah, but
you can criticize people, but you cannot promote a candidate.
Oh,
But
if the
she's pitching
IRS gave
this.
her just 10% of the illegal scrutiny they gave to Tea Party groups, man, her new organization would be gone.
well, she's pitching this as a nonpartisan entity.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
pitch
she's
myself
saying,
as a non-drinker.
but her money argument, when it comes right down to it, is you better go out and vote, because if you don't, you know those people that we all want to vote, we want everybody to vote. Well,
Those people will vote, and they're going to give, and they're going to unroll our socialist agenda by voting, and we can't allow that to happen.
And it's like like Brian Regan, which is like a flock of doves out of her mouth before she can stop it. She probably doesn't even know. She doesn't even think of that, the fact she said that. Okay, so here are the 2 topics I would really like to do this week. Number one is, oh, by the way, more good news on the 18th anniversary of More Cowbell. Republicans have the highest favorability rating in 7 years going into the midterm elections here.
I saw that.
Not my topic for this week's show. So millennials, this is a topic. Millennials have thrown off the divorce statistics in this country. And knowing how Bill hates millennials, you'll be
I don't hate them.
You'll be
I pity
dismayed.
them. They're worthless and weak. They do nothing. They are nothing. They sit around all day playing that sick electric Nintendo.
The electric Nintendo.
Well, while they're sitting around doing nothing all day, one of the nothing things they're doing is getting divorced. They're not getting divorced at the rate that other demographic groups are.
That's impressive.
It's an interesting story because the study basically says that their divorce rate is lower. Now, there's a couple of other interesting things in this story that I read as well, and I'll get the source of it in time for our actual episode. But here with our members, we can just be real fast and loose and sloppy with the facts,
As opposed to what we normally do.
as one does. So one of the reasons why there's a lower divorce rate is because the millennials are waiting longer to get married, less likely to get married young and impulsively, and. But I thought that the curious thing is all the way down at the end of the story, they basically said that poor people are still getting married at a more frequent rate than well-educated, better-off people are. And they're having babies out of wedlock as well. And actually, no, I reversed that. They're having babies out of wedlock, not getting married. And so there is a nuptial inequality here is what we have. We have educated, better off people getting married. Meanwhile, the poor are just living in sin and producing babies, and this is unfair.
Yes, was that the conclusion? That it was unfair?
Well, yeah. The thrust of it was all the way. It was like they buried the lead all the way down at the bottom of the story. It basically said that was the problem.
It's racism essentially that white people decide to get married.
Well, it didn't say white people.
Larry Elder put up a thing on Twitter just in the last few days, and I think I've got the numbers from this right. Poor people who delay having children until they're married and delay getting married until they complete high school have a 75% chance of reaching the middle class or higher. And poor people who don't follow these social norms have a 7% chance of joining the middle class or higher.
Well, and this says many of the poorer, less educated Americans are opting not to get married at all. Their cohabiting relationships are less stable than they used to be, and marriage is becoming a more durable but far more exclusive institution.
That's it. There's so many fewer of them getting married. I was going to ask you, is the reason the divorce rate is so low is that none of them have been married yet?
Yep.
So there's some element of that in there.
Well, it's fascinating because the boomers are continuing to be, serial divorcees.
Well, I was about to say, beating, if the millennials are increasing the rates here in a positive sense, outperforming the baby boomers on positive social norms, that's a really low hurdle.
That's right.
And we ought to know.
The generation of the baby boomers was, my grandfather's generation was hoping to be, better than their parents were. And the kids of the baby boomers are like, okay, that's not much of an aspiration.
No.
No. Man, I could do better than this and be a total screw-up.
All I want is to have faster internet connections than my mom and dad.
That's right.
That's basically it.
And still in the same house. No. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting topic, both from a values perspective of here's a younger generation who is apparently, you could look at it as saying they value marriage more because they're waiting longer to engage in it, and they have been part of the detritus of divorce from the previous generations, and they don't want to see that happen again. And so once they do get married, they're much more likely to stay married. And that's kind of encouraging. But then the social scientists get a hold of it and they're like, yeah, but it's only the rich and educated ones. The poor people are out there cohabiting and having unstable cohabitational relationships.
And therefore, we must destabilize the marriages so that we can have some kind of misery equality.
That's right.
Yeah, I heard you say detritus. I don't know what it means, but it sounds racist to me.
That's a great word.
It's somebody who's from Detroit, I think, is the
detritus. Oh my God, you could actually turn that into something.
Okay, so that's one episode. I don't know whether that's going to be members or my regular episode or not. And then the second episode comes from this story. Boy, someday I'm going to write big enough so that I can read without my glasses on.
Excuse me.
But he's looking forward to this one. Anyway, this was from a story in a publication or a website called The Cut. By somebody whose last name was Traister, Traister. Anyway, it's under the headline, "When the Muzzle Comes Off." And basically, the writer was making the case that all of this Me Too movement and even the accusations against Judge Kavanaugh, even if they don't pan out, for example, even if Kavanaugh winds up getting approved or confirmed, it's been and I'm kind of paraphrasing her here, it's been a salutary experience because so many women have been able to unburden themselves from the stuff they've been carrying around for years because they legitimately were sexually assaulted and haven't said anything about it. And so we've got this weird dynamic going on with questions about whether Kavanaugh's accusers are legit, and yet at the same time, we've got a lot of other people coming out with apparently legitimate things that they have a lot more details on. And I just kind of wondered, like, what's the value of one man's reputation?
Yeah, well, that's number one,
Yeah.
and it's the people who walk away from a malus question. It's not worth one man's reputation. This is the whole idea of that story and the fallacy of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. Everybody, once you start. The people are individuals. There's no such thing as social justice. There's individual justice for individuals who've been harmed and so on. And that's why I think this Kavanaugh thing, among the many other destructive and disgusting things that it's done, has actually, I think, really hurt the Me Too movement because it just sounds so phony to me and so vindictive and so made up and so contrived and all the rest of it that I just think it's a disgrace.
I think you may be accurate with there's no such thing as social justice, there's only individual justice, but I wonder whether if we flip that around, if it's possible that there is such a thing as social injustice. In other words, there is an atmosphere in
Yes.
society
Of course
that
there is.
promulgates or permits or encourages abhorrent behavior.
Yeah, when
Yes,
you put
and
social,
that injustice is inflicted on individuals,
Yes.
and those individuals are harmed. Yeah.
yeah, when you put social in front of dang near anything, it becomes the opposite of its actual meaning.
Except for disease,
Yes,
in which case it's the same thing.
still the same thing. Still disease.
So anyway, I found that the argument was fascinating, and I think especially if I'm caught up in the moment about what I think about the Democratic tactics to stall or foreclose on the Kavanaugh nomination, we may be missing an opportunity here because we appear to be shutting down all women when we're shutting down one woman. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. It's a great topic. Let's do that for the general show. We'll do millennials for members.
Okay,
like
so
it.
this is general show, major intersection. Okay, got that. All right, Stephen Green. Now that you have your mouth full, do you have a topic this week with
No.
which you'd like to discuss us heretofore?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I do. We're now close enough to the November elections that ordinary people, not are the freaks like us and our wonderful viewers, are actually starting to pay attention now. And I think, therefore, it is time for a bull session going into this blue wave. Is it a blue wave? Republicans going to hold the House? What's going to happen? And I want to talk about this thing. I don't think I actually believe this, but there may be a case to be made for this. I'm watching this lackluster Republican House effort. Bill, you talked about this, I think it was on yesterday's Bill Whittle Now segment, about the GOP's complete failure to sell their biggest success, tax reform. And now you've got the Democrats who have been leading in by various measures on the generic ballots, just seeming to sabotage their own chances of retaking the House with all of this insanity that we've been watching. And it just raises the question, again, I don't think I actually believe this, But has the country just gone so crazy, so ungovernable, that neither side, deep in their hearts, actually wants to run the place anymore? Are they subconsciously sabotaging their own chances of taking the house?
There's
or
a
holding
passage.
The house?
There's a brief passage in the Old Testament where the prophet is saying that there will come a day when men will grab a hold of a man and say, "You have a coat, you be our leader." Like, things have gotten so bad, they're like,
We've passed that point, I think.
you've got a jacket, you do it.
You have underwear on.
Well,
That's right.
That's a really interesting point, and there would be nothing great for me. There's there's no. I don't see a lot of personal legal justice in this country much anymore, but every now and then you get celestial justice, and Hillary Clinton's a great example of this. She needs to be in jail, but on some level, if she was in jail, she'd be a martyr, and she'd be able to. Right now she's just a loser, and she has to live with that, and that's probably the worst thing you could do to her. And on some level, I wonder if maybe this Kavanaugh assassination attempt hasn't pushed enough independents into just such a level of distaste that either they start thinking about voting Republican or they don't show up for the Democrats. The walk-away movement is real. The question is, we don't know how deep it is, and I do certainly get the feeling that a lot of people are getting pretty disgusted with the whole social justice warrior thing and the whole, just across the board leftist insanity.
For those of you who don't pay very close attention to the news, when Bill Whittle says the Kavanaugh assassination attempt, he is engaging in hyperbole.
I'm sorry, I was engaging in hyperbole, although not that much hyper in front of the bowl.
Yeah.
So Steve, are you suggesting that I had a local official tell me once, I think he was a township supervisor at the time, and he wound up running for county commissioner with me, and he said, because I had never run for office before, and he said, "I just want to let you know that the only thing worse than running for office is getting elected."
Absolutely. Well, it's like problem gamblers, gambling addicts. They keep gambling until they lose every time. They can be up, $2 million, and they will sit at that table. They will keep playing cards until they are wiped out. And you have to wonder. They don't consciously want to lose. This is subconsciously. But you'd think with all the jockeying for power that one of these parties would either be competent at it, and I'm talking about the GOP, or wouldn't be bat stuff insane like the Democrats.
Well, the great thing about our political system is that if either party ran unopposed, they'd both lose.
Yes.
I wonder, because you made me think of two people on the local level. One guy who lost like 4 elections in a row, 2 of them at least to me, and yet continued to up the ante, putting his own money into election efforts, and fewer people would contribute to his campaigns. But eventually, like this past year, he ran for Congress. And he lost.
Did he win?
No. He lost the primary. And then there's another guy who I was convinced.
Same syndrome.
It was a really nice guy, but the only reason he was really running for the position that he did in county government was that it was better than his landscaping business. And so I wonder how many people who are running for Congress, for example, really, it's not that they have a burning desire to be a congressman. It just seemed like a reasonably stable job.
Yeah, that's a good case for raising. Good case for raising congressional salaries. If you could get ordinary people to run for Congress because it seemed like it might pay well, I'd rather have that than the people that are attracted to it. You were telling us back in the old days that one of the guys was, I don't remember the numbers, but he spent like $250,000 to get a $36,000 a year job or whatever the actual figures were, and it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
You know what? Here's the deal. You pay them all $1 million a year, just base salary. You give them all the freebies, all the perks, but the deal is they can't buy or sell, trade, stocks, commodities, any of that. They can't lobby afterwards or any of that. You pay them well while they serve, but they can never make a dime off of their legislation or lobbying efforts.
I had that thought in an afterburner 5 years ago, but I went further than that. I said, in addition to that, for the $1 million, they're not allowed to legislate either.
I love it.
$5 million for senators a year, $1 million a year for House of Representatives. We get a bunch of really, really nice places down in the, in the Caribbean, and and we just pay them to go sit on the beach and drink.
You lose $100,000 for every bill you introduce.
It turns out it's about $1 billion, which is
that's nothing.
Big savings.
That's like 8 hours of Medicare and Medicaid spending.
Now, didn't we do an episode on Ben Sass's legislation, which is exactly what Steve just outlined? Did we do an episode on that, of right angle?
You did that. You did that last week.
Did I? Okay.
This is why I love you, Scott.
Yeah, if you say so, Steve. I treat you guys like I treat my wife. And if she says that I've done something in the past, I'm like, okay, that's probably true. Okay, well, that sounds like a fun episode as well. And Bill Whittle, Smod Tarries, your turn.
Let me throw in one last thing, though. I forgot to mention this at the get-go. I want to play this one kind of fast and loose, more of a bull session. We don't get to do a whole lot of those, and I think this topic really lends itself to that.
Okay. Do we have to wear antlers?
Yes. In your pants.
I just said that so that somebody in the comment section can go, bulls don't have antlers, they have horns. Yes, Bill.
You're dead to me. I think what I'm going to do is, old and busted, virtue signaling, new hotness, positional morality. I think that's the term. I'll get it right for the episode. Yeah. Or relative. It was on that Instapundit site that nobody reads anymore.
Never heard of it.
And this time I actually have the people to that I can cite. But basically, what they're saying is that we all know about virtue signaling and how virtue signaling sets them aside. We're good people and you're evil people. But now that we've got that settled, how do I prove that I'm a better good person than you are?
Oh.
And that is a chasm that has no bottom. That's why they're racing to find it. And so in a room full of progressives, how do you virtue signal in a room full of progressives? If you're a social justice warrior, how do you virtue signal to social justice warriors? You have to be more morally outraged than anybody else in the room, or else you're not special. And this is, I think the whole thing's a result of the self-esteem movement, where people have not been allowed to compete in areas normally. You might want to, if you want to stand out, you might want to make some money or have a business or start a new product, or maybe you have a family or you want to do something. But they're not allowed to do any of these things. And the only skill set they have, and it's a pretty thin skill, is protesting. And so since that's the only skill set they have, their natural human competition and desire to be better and be seen as better than other people can't be channeled into things like having a more expensive watch, because that's racism. And so it's channeled into this kind of positional morality where everybody is always striving to outrage the other people. And it was based on an Instapundit article, and I've got the source that it linked to. But the great example, really just a telling example, was, I'll check it out, I think it was Purdue. There was some sort of a guest speaker, and a crowd of 7 or 8 social justice warriors came in, and they started yelling the guest speaker down and screaming at the guest speaker for how he wasn't acknowledging his own privilege and whiteness and stuff. And all of the other kids, all the other socialist kids in the audience started to applaud. And the 7 people that came in were outraged,
That they were interrupted?
No, not that they were interrupted. What was it? I'll get the quote. My cultural sensitivity is not a joke. It's not a show. I'm not out here for applause. I'm not performing for an audience.
I'm not Lady Gaga.
Yeah. So exactly. So why? And the guy in the article said what was really. Hello.
Wow. You just got all fuzzy on me, man.
I did. What the hell happened?
Yeah.
I got
It's almost like
Steve's
something. It's like something. Oh, there it is.
Nobody can quit my drinking.
It's like it's like the writer of the article said, the only appropriate response in that case would be to have the whole audience stand in bowed silence, and just out of sheer reverence, just maybe perhaps you could weep a little or something at the injustice of it all. But this is where we're going, and we're going there real fast.
This sounds like
who is this
Maslow's
we,
hierarchy
Kimosabe?
of me.
Well, it is. It's Maslow's hierarchy of weeniness, whininess. But here's the thing. And this is important. All of this moral posturing is designed to do what human beings do, which is to find a way to increase their social status relative to everybody else. And people have different ways of doing this. And if you told these social justice warriors that what they're doing is they're trying to show how elite and how aristocratic they are, how patriarchal they are, how much in control they are, they're basically doing this, pack of dogs fighting over a piece of meat to see who's the, they're trying to find out who's the omega male,
Yeah.
and that's what they're trying to find, and of course even the omega male is outranked by every female in the room, and every female in the room is outranked by every person of color in the room, and every person of color in the room is outranked by every Muslim in the room, and so on and so on and so on.
So would this fit with the category of the people who shouted Ted Cruz and his wife Heidi out of the restaurant?
Funny you mention that, because that's what actually kind of got me thinking about this kind of thing. Yeah. So
that was horrifying. If you watch the video of that, I just look at that not because I was frightened or thought they were going to cause physical harm. Quite the contrary. I was afraid that Ted was going to punch him when they started blocking his wife. But the utter terror of these people, terrified in themselves. I don't mean that they were terrorizing somebody else. I mean they themselves were terrified so that they got to the point where all they could do was shout and chant until what they feared was driven from their presence.
This is what children do: is they shout and they chant.
And
while
the New Yorker,
Ted Cruz is going, "God bless you, ma'am."
There was more to this. The New Yorker said that Ted Cruz was hiding out at a $115 tasting menu restaurant, hiding out in a public place.
Yeah,
exactly. And then apparently these same shouting chanters get on Twitter later to show this video, and in their own Twitter thread are making death threats against the president and conservatives. And Twitter is allowing this because that is Twitter's positioning.
They did your jungle analogy there, Bill, is apt, because when they drove him from that place, it was like, they were so pumped up that it's like, look at the victory we have achieved here.
Wow, we interrupted somebody's dinner.
I'll actually let you. Yeah, I'd like you to bring up the Cruz thing. I'll just go with it. And if you could bring it up, that'd be great.
Okay.
Because the reason they do this, and we know the reason they do it, but the fact that they do it is because there's no consequences to them. And having seen this thing early in the morning when I'm at my most cantankerous, I began to think, we need a squad of conservatives,
a brute squad,
to find out who all of these people are and make their lives public. They want to be social justice warriors and stop the Nazis. Congratulations, the guys who stopped the Nazis have actual names like Bonhoeffer, for example. And so, if you want to have that position, then have the courage to basically let everybody know who you are, take off the mask. And so these people go and they do these things, and it's just a lark, It's just, I'm not saying they do it just for giggles. They obviously do it in order to save humanity from the crushing fascism of a guy who wants government to leave people alone. But there's no consequences. They don't get arrested. Have you ever seen them arrested?
No, in fact, they tweeted out the video. It wasn't like a bystander captured them on video. They recorded it and put it out with a great sense of pride.
Precisely. So what would happen in a sane society? It doesn't matter if Ted Cruz is a senator. Ted Cruz could be anybody.
Yeah.
If a bunch of non-paying strangers come into a restaurant and start hassling and screaming and yelling at a patron, you call the police come and arrest these people, they get a criminal record, and maybe some of them won't do it again. But that's not what happened. They became famous. And so the cycle of insanity continues. But yeah, that'd be a great example to use, I think, during the show.
I wondered after I watched that video, I thought, if I were in Ted's shoes, like what other response could he have had than to just quietly leave the restaurant, and make sure that his wife wasn't harmed. I mean, I think it'd be different if he were alone, or with a male friend or something like that than he is when he's with his wife.
There.
But you just, it's horrifying to see that and go, okay, well, what would I have done? Would I have just sat down and said, "Garçon"?
There's one video of it's out at Berkeley. It's outdoors, and it's a group of these social justice warriors trying to block what looked like just like a couple of like these patriot guys, these guys that just show up at these Antifa rallies, and this probably 17-year-old, long-haired, very effeminate young man got in front of one of these guys. The guy was trying to walk away, and this guy got in front of him and went like this with his arms and blocked him and came in contact with him. And the guy just threw a very quick little right jab, and that kid went down and
like a tree.
Like a tree, and he had to be picked up by other social justice warriors, and he had this astonished look on his face, like,
oh, a consequence.
Yeah, why did that happen? And
cause meat effect.
Look, especially in a world where everything's taken out of context, the fact of the matter is not enough people get punched in the face anymore. And this is really the problem. There are no consequences for this kind of behavior. And this woman who's accused, Kavanaugh's not going to have any consequences other than making millions of dollars and all the rest of it. She's not going to go to jail. If it turns out that she can't prove these allegations, then that is character assassination. It's slander and it's libel as far as I'm concerned.
And she gets a book deal.
And she should be sued or prosecuted and spend some time in prison. Especially if it ends up that she admits that it wasn't true. In that case, I would just haul her off to prison, and we'll get to this when we get to your topic, Scotty. But I don't know if you ever listen. I listen on Sirius Radio, and of all people, Larry the Cable Guy has a talk show. It's a kind of a conservative, relatively conservative talk show, and he drops the whole accent and stuff. And I was listening to Larry the Cable Guy very eloquently say that it doesn't matter now whether he's innocent or guilty. This is on him for the rest of his life, and they know it. They know it. It's designed to stick to you even if they can't prove it. In fact, the less provable it is, the more it'll stick, because you can't. If this woman said it was on July 29th of 1986, I was in this place at this location when it happened, if she said that, then it's possible, in fact likely, that Kavanaugh will be able to say, well, isn't that interesting? I was in London at the time.
Actually, did you see the news about this? And since we're not going to do a topic on it this week, I want to ask you two questions about that. Number one, I want to ask you if you watched any of his interview with Martha McCallum on TV last night. But the other one was Kavanaugh, at the age of 17, actually maintained a pretty detailed calendar and has turned it over.
Yep.
Did he?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it shows like, okay, he was at football camp. It actually lists parties that he went to. He had an interview when he had interviews for college. When his family went on vacation, he actually had a fairly detailed calendar that he has retained all these years.
Scott, the detail I loved, and I don't know if you saw this one or not, the pocket constitution that he carries around with him at all times is so old, he had to write in the 27th Amendment by hand.
Oh, wow.
And good. And he said, he made a statement saying he's not leaving.
Good.
If Kavanaugh is not appointed to the Supreme Court, then that is a serious watershed in the history of this country, in the same way that the Clarence Thomas assassination was the beginning of all. Actually, I take that back. It was the Bork. Yeah. Bork was the beginning of the end of this.
And I don't like Bork. I really don't. His view of the Bill of Rights is so limited that I think he would have proven to be a real disappointment. But that doesn't justify the smear job that Ted Kennedy and his crew attempted on him and succeeded.
Well, I try to, as people hate me for this, but I try to look at every situation as if I don't really know the facts. And so I look at this and go, okay, let's just take.
Well, there's your mistake right there.
That's right. Let's just take the information that we're getting here and grant the various possibilities that could happen. And after the Martha McCallum interview with Judge Kavanaugh repeatedly stating that not only did this not happen with this woman or that other woman that just appeared, but it's never happened to any woman, You know, I've never been part of anything like this in any location at any time. And so you take that and you go, okay, you just said that on national television. He's probably going to repeat that in front of, probably in sworn testimony before a Senate panel at risk of perjury. And he's going to say that. So what are the options you're left with? Either he's telling the truth, or he's so reckless that he's willing to risk, you know, essentially opprobrium and possibly prison, or he is so evil that he thinks he can get away with it. That he's like he's pulling all the strings and somehow he's done it, but he can get away with it because he's Brett frickin' Kavanaugh. I mean,
you're watching this. It's like watching all of the steps to the Civil War. You know, it's like watching John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, and just, you know, it is so vile and so low. And I heard people saying, well, you know, Kavanaugh was out there trying to prove his innocence, and I'm thinking,
no,
there's something wrong with that sentence.
Yeah. Something bigly wrong.
Something very wrong with that sentence, trying to prove his innocence. And I don't have proof that my cat didn't fly to Venus last night in a specially equipped flying saucer that it keeps. I can't prove that it didn't.
You should
I wasn't there. I don't have cameras on it. It's my cat said, I said. And we always believe the cat. So so that's the world we live in now.
This is why I became a dog person.
Well,
they don't go anywhere.
You know, let's just keep this on the Backstage show.
Yeah.
But just since this came to my mind, women, these feminist women are miserably unhappy, and every day they create a world where it becomes less and less and less possible for men to act like men in any way. I'm not saying putting your hand over a woman's mouth and, you know, and trying to silence her is male behavior that's acceptable. No. But I don't think that happened. But really, what they're really trying to do now is they're trying to say that we're so delicate and fragile that if I go to a party drunk and I meet a boy there who's drunk and he starts pawing me, and after a while I decide I don't like it, then I'm going to file rape charges against this guy and ruin his life, then what's going to happen is young men they're just going to do what they're already doing. They're going to spend their time in computer games, and they're going to be looking anxiously at whether or not the price of sex dolls will come down as market volume increases. And they will. And you're basically leaving them with nothing to do but to check out.
Generation of males going galt on relationships. It's really sad.
And you will have a world for a while. If you look at the Nazis were the greatest visible example of what happens to a society that is so out of balance in favor of the masculine. You know, Nazi Germany was such a complete, absolute, total commitment to masculinity and you know, these masculine values. And we're looking at what's happening when a society gets committed to completely feminine values. And you know, just take away reason and accountability. And
I used that on Instapilot last week. It was a hit.
Yeah, it was great.
The people who are hardest hit by this, by the way, are this whole, you know, kerfuffle, as James Toronto would call it. The people who are hardest hit are the people who have legitimate claims to having been sexually assaulted, because it's not a political weapon. It's something that happened to somebody who was in a vulnerable position. And the other thing that bugs me is that not yet have I seen a discussion where somebody's willing to step forward and say, by the way, in all of this discussion about people, you know, drunk at parties and men doing bad things to women, let me just say, it's a really good idea to not get drunk at a party where you are not in control of the situation. You know, it's a really good idea if you don't want to be at risk for the possibility that there's a bad guy there, whoever that may be. Yeah. The argument instead is made, hey, you drunk guy, you are responsible to not do anything irresponsible while you're drunk, but I am not accountable for my own drunkenness.
That's right. Or my own behaviors, so on, because I'm a child and I'm a woman and I can't
and
be able to
that's
make
an
those,
insult
those
to women.
Yes, it is. And since we're talking about this new world we're living in, what's this woman's name? Ford, last name? I forgot her name.
Christine Blasey
Ford, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think just to make a point, I think we ought to find somebody who has been in one of her classes or sessions, or somebody who had some vague contact with her who's a conservative, somebody very obscure, and trot this person forward and say that she basically molested him and groped him in a session, and that his life is absolutely destroyed by it, and then basically say, and now prove to me that it didn't happen. You know, prove it didn't happen.
It happened sometime in the late 90s, but I couldn't remember which office.
That's right, and I don't remember what city it was in either, but it happened. And when I saw her on television, all of these memories flooded back, and I realized it was her. And I really mean it. I'm serious as I can be. I think the only thing you can do for these people, since there's no law anymore, because if there was a law, we wouldn't have these problems. You punish people for false testimony and all the rest of it. But since there's no law anymore, all you've got is social deterrence. And I'd launch campaigns against all of these people. I'd launch campaigns against all of them. And I would make them feel the burn of being accused of something that you didn't do. And then, worst case scenario, then everybody's accusing everybody, so no accusation means anything, which is a better world than the one we live in now. But as you say, the people who get burned on that are the people who actually suffered real harm.
It's a shame that the Supreme Court nominees don't have the same system that members of Congress do, that makes people, shut up and go away for money on the public dole.
I like Kavanaugh better every day.
Well, like I said, if he was lying last night on that interview with Martha McCallum, he's one of the most evil people I could imagine.
We know he's not lying.
So therefore, it seems highly unlikely that he's not telling the truth at this point.
The reason they held on to it, they, as you pointed out a couple times on Bill Whittle Now, they had this information for months. Feinstein had it, Ellis had it, everybody had it. Nobody used it. The reason nobody used it was so weak.
Until somebody in Feinstein's office leaked it.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
Whether they meant it to or not, it's so weak that I pray that it's going to backfire on them, and we'll talk about that, I guess, in Steve's episode.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy the kind of content that you've heard for the last hour and 75 minutes, we encourage you to encourage others to become members like you are at BillWhittle.com. The VHS tape in my machine is flapping at this point. It's just going. But we thank you so much for watching this, for supporting this effort, for watching Right Angle and sharing it and liking it, and loving your friends by sharing it with them. We also thank all the people who have started watching this Bill's interview show, Bill Whittle Now, which is coming out every day, or at least 5 days a week at this point, with his cutting-edge commentary on the news of the day. And so that's been a lot of fun to see how you warmly embrace that and have spread the word about that too. And
just one little thing: if you are watching this on the Bill Whittle site and you're a member and you just watch this backstage episode, I just ask you to be kind and rewind for the next viewer, so that they don't have to wait 15 minutes, for the thing to be able to start. Just be kind, rewind when you're done watching these episodes.
We also did, if I might self-plug a little bit here, we did have a freak occurrence on the website because we have one episode that appeared this week that doesn't fit under any category, and that is my interview with Fritz and Todd Edmonds.
Oh, you need to watch that. It's amazing.
It's funny. I titled it badly and I described it badly because I said it was the most uplifting story that you'll hear this week. And unfortunately, people are not looking for that. They're looking for something that will really drag them down in the gutter and depress them. So if you would send emails to your friends and say, here's a video of a lion tearing a kitten limb from limb or something, so that people will actually click through.
Yeah, so they'll watch it and then they'll end up feeling better.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, for Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.